Hello Rebel Pals, my special VPs. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I apologize, by the way, for taking a long break in posting videos, but I am back and I'm going to be posting videos every week. For those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Emase. I have a PhD in biomedical informatics from Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. And currently I am a research scientist / biostatistician focusing on public health qualitative and quantitative research and program evaluation. Today's topic is chronic stress and how it affects the brain. By the end of this video, you will gain knowledge of what chronic stress means and how to identify it. You'll be able to list stressors that can bring about chronic stress, and you'll get some understanding of the parts of the brain that are affected when you are exposed to prolonged chronic stress. You will also get insight into the impact of chronic stress on the brain and what to do to reverse these changes. First of all, let me give you a brief insight into what chronic stress looks like, and these are just some examples. If you are exposed to continuous or frequent stressors such that your body does not have enough time to go back to a state of rest and relaxation, what I would call your baseline, before you are hit with another stressful event or before you face what I call drama, then you may be experiencing chronic stress. When this happens, your body remains in a constant state of survival, meaning you are experiencing survival response, and this is not a good place to be all the time. Sometimes it's healthy because we need it to survive, but for you to remain in a survival mode all the time, it's not good. It affects the brain, and I'm going to show you how. When you are constantly in a survival mode, it leads to moodiness, irritability. You are always worrying about something and you're feeling overwhelmed, or just thinking that you don't have enough time to do what you normally do, and you're unable to get yourself to complete the tasks that you used to be able to do. So your daily activities of living become overwhelming. It becomes now difficult and becomes too much for you to handle. And if you're feeling like this, it may be because you are experiencing things that are causing so much stress. You are exposed to someone that is causing you so much stress. If you're wondering what is happening to you, if you are always on edge and alert, if you normally love something but now the things that you used to love, you don't find them interesting, you may be experiencing chronic stress. There are other situations where it could be depression, but today I just want to focus on chronic stress. Now, when you are feeling like this, it is not normal. It is problematic for your mind, for your brain, for your body, and even for the people around you. One thing you need to remember is that our body needs rest and digest, rest and heal, rest and relaxation to reboot correctly and to regenerate new cells. This is why being in this survival mode or experiencing survival response all the time is not healthy, because your body is not getting that opportunity to relax. You're not getting that opportunity to rest fully and bounce back, so to say. One thing I just want to say though, when it comes to stress, is that there are so many types of stress, and we all face different stressors every day, and some of them are not harmful, meaning they're harmless. But when it comes to chronic stress, it's someone who has been experiencing stress over a prolonged period of time. So it's not the daily stress that you face. Example, you're driving to work and there's so much traffic, or you have kids and you have to do a lot of talking. Those are just harmless stress. Chronic stress affects the brain, and that's what I really want you to know today. So now let's talk about stressors that can lead to chronic stress. Okay, another name for that could be survival mode. So stressors that can keep you in survival mode, I'm gonna list some of them. This list, by the way, is not exhaustive. I have my son here disturbing me. Anyway, here are some of the things that can lead to chronic stress, and like I mentioned, this list is not exhaustive. Number 10 is death of a loved one or a near-death experience. Number 9, fighting in a war zone as a military personnel. 8 is living through war or natural disaster. 7, financial difficulties. 6, job loss. 5, childhood abuse and still ongoing. 4, intimate partner abuse. Example could be physical abuse, emotional, psychological, mental, verbal, etc. 3, taking care of family members. 2, heavy workload, no time to rest. And number 1 is discrimination at a workplace or working in a hostile work environment. Now your body is hardwired to react to stress in ways meant to protect you, which is why chronic stress can wreak havoc on your mind and your body, which is our focus for today. Chronic stress is a form of trauma, believe it or not, and trauma can have a significant impact on the brain, particularly on the areas that are responsible for processing emotions, memory, and stress. And that's what I'm going to show you today, those parts of the brain responsible for emotions, memory, and stress, and how they're affected by chronic stress. Now let's talk about parts of the brain affected by chronic stress. Number one is the hypothalamus. Okay, here is an image of the hypothalamus. It's right here and it's underneath the thalamus. Quickly, hypothalamus is responsible for regulating the body's response to stress. So if you're under stress, the hypothalamus is one area of the brain that regulates the body's response to stress. And this is because the hypothalamus is responsible for producing hormones such as adrenaline and stress hormones such as cortisol, as well as chemical messengers such as dopamine, serotonin. If you are under chronic stress, the hypothalamus becomes overreactive. And that makes sense, right? It just becomes overreactive because it's just constantly trying to compensate for this chronic stress that you're experiencing. So it's overreacting. Another thing that the hypothalamus is responsible for is regulating the body temperature. If you notice that your lower extremities are colder, this is because it's pulling blood flow to other parts of your body that really need them. There are some parts of your body, like your organs, they're more vital. So it pulls blood to those parts of the body. And then things like your hair, you can survive without your hair, so you might end up losing your hair will start falling off. Your fingers, your feet, they're colder. It might be because you're under stress. It could also be because of other health conditions, so just be mindful of that. The other part of the brain that chronic stress affects is the amygdala. Now the amygdala there's an image of the amygdala. It's right here. The amygdala is on the left and the right side. And what does the amygdala do? And how is it affected by chronic stress? Let's talk about that. So what happens is when you are under chronic stress, the amygdala changes shape, believe it or not. So now it's no longer in its normal shape because of the stress that you are under, that you are just exposed to constant stress. So the amygdala is what is responsible for fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which is the survival response. You know, the survival mode is responsible for that. And what happens is that it sends a message to the frontal cortex, which I'm going to show you in a minute, to let the frontal cortex know that this person is under stress. We need to survive. The person needs to survive. So do something, you know. Another thing, the amygdala, another way the amygdala is affected when you're under chronic stress is that it blocks slow thinking. So now you're thinking fast. You have this quick threat assessment. The amygdala is responsible for you assessing anything and everything quickly as a threat because it wants to protect you. So it's just trying to protect you by blocking slow thinking. So now slow thinking goes out the window. Amygdala pretty much becomes overreactive. You now have an exaggerated fear response. You may start experiencing anxiety. So what the amygdala does is that it starts sending messages to the prefrontal cortex that this person is under stress. And before I tell you what happens, so let me just quickly talk about what the prefrontal cortex is. So this is the prefrontal cortex here. So first of all, this is the amygdala. And over here is the prefrontal cortex. Is just right here, right behind our forehead. And the prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive functioning, such as decision making, problem solving, impulse control, fear modulation, morality, intuition, emotional regulation, body regulation, that kind of thing. So what happens is the amygdala sends so many messages to the prefrontal cortex for the person to make decisions based on this threat, right, that the amygdala has assessed or has identified. But the problem is that the prefrontal cortex has a limited amount of information that it can handle. So it becomes overwhelmed. It's just getting bombarded by messages from the amygdala that there is threat, there is threat, there is threat, this person is under attack, do something. So the prefrontal cortex now begins to malfunction. It's now dysfunctional because it can't handle all these messages. It's just too much. So now all the executive function begins to decline. All the executive functionings are affected, okay? So decision making good decision making goes out the window, right? Problem solving goes out the window. There's ability to problem solve. So it's not like they're completely gone, but they decline. Everything declines because now the prefrontal cortex cannot handle these amount of information coming from the amygdala. So this is why you have to be quick to identifying that you are under chronic stress, or that there is something or someone bringing so much stress to your life. Because eventually, I mean, just think about it. If your amygdala changes shape because you're exposed to chronic stress, your hypothalamus is overreacting and producing too much hormones or whatever. Now your hormones and neurotransmitters are imbalanced. The prefrontal cortex is now dysfunctional because you're because of somebody or something in your life, right? Now you're no longer thinking straight, you know. And then there's another part of the brain. So this is the other part of the brain that's affected by chronic stress, which is called the hippocampus. So this is the hippocampus right here next to the amygdala, and it's both on the left and right side. I'm gonna come back to the prefrontal cortex later, but let me talk about the hippocampus first. So the hippocampus is responsible for short-term memory. When you're under a lot of stress, the hippocampus shrinks. It's now smaller than what it's supposed to be, okay? I mean, isn't that crazy? So the hippocampus, when you're under high level of stress, it shrinks. And why is this very important? It's because the hippocampus is responsible for forming memories, like new memories. So short-term memories, the hippocampus stores them and transfers them to the parts of the brain that store them as long-term memory. So now your memory is out of whack. You may experience memory loss, or you may be looking for things. Have you ever experienced, like, you have your phone in your hand and you're looking for your phone, or you are looking for your car keys, so you may be misplacing things a lot or forgetting things? Okay, but this is short-term memory, not long-term memory. You will still remember long-term memory. But this is not to say that it's only chronic stress that's responsible for memory loss. There are other things, you know, that are responsible, but I'm not talking about that. Just letting you know that chronic stress can lead to memory loss because it affects the hippocampus, which is responsible for short-term memory. And even the prefrontal cortex is also responsible for memory. So if the prefrontal cortex is dysfunctional, your memory is also out of whack. Now, things like having difficulty holding a conversation, or making poor decisions, or asking the same questions over and over, or just having difficulty in general. You know yourself, you know your baseline, you know who you are, who you were before this stressor came into your life, right? Maybe work related, it may be somebody in your life, but you know who you were before this. So you should be able to look back and think, what new stressor came into my life before I started having difficulty having conversation or asking the same question multiple times? So before you start experiencing things that memory loss, okay? So you just take a minute to think about these things. Now, another thing that is affected by chronic stress are neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, etc. I'm not gonna go into detail what they are, but they're chemicals like I mentioned earlier. The hypothalamus is responsible for producing hormones, producing neurotransmitters. So just imagine if the part of the brain that's responsible for producing these, neurotransmitters are affected, then the neurotransmitters will be affected. So the chemical messengers are affected. They may be imbalanced. They might just not be functioning correctly. They're supposed to send messages between neurons in the brain. Now, they're no longer able to send messages correctly, or they're just not enough in the brain to operate for the brain to function correctly. These are examples of neurotransmitters right here. But let's go to... Okay, so what the neurotransmitters do. Just quickly, the neurotransmitters affect mood. They affect anxiety. So either your anxiety levels are up or low. They affect sleep. You may gain weight or lose weight. And also it affects heart rate. And it also affects aggression and fear modulation, so controlling fear. Okay, like I said, with the amygdala malfunctioning because of chronic stress, fear modulation goes out the window, and you now start experiencing exaggerated fear, meaning everything is danger. It's like danger alert. Okay, now let's go to ways to improve executive functioning. This is one of the ways for you to improve executive functioning, because if your prefrontal cortex is functioning correctly, hopefully it can handle the chronic stress that you're experiencing. But like I said, with too many messages coming from the amygdala, prefrontal cortex will become overwhelmed. So the best approach is to identify the stress or identify the stressors and start finding ways to cope with them or to avoid them. So quickly, with the executive functioning, to improve this, one way is quality sleep. Yes, sleep is paramount. I mean, sleep is something that the body needs to remain healthy. It's almost like it's oxygen. You need to sleep. And it's not just about having a long night's sleep. It's about quality. Quantity is also a part of it, because recommended hours of sleep, 8 hours. But if you sleep 8 hours and it's not quality sleep, meaning you're tossing and turning a lot and you're not experiencing deep sleep, you're not experiencing REM sleep, what they call REM, then it's not quality sleep. The brain needs quality sleep. It needs that deep sleep. Then exercise is very good. If you can exercise, even if it's only 30 minutes every day, that will make a significant impact. Meditation, mindfulness. Meditation is just for you to zone out everything. It's a time to yourself, right? A time to yourself. Just block all the noise. If you can do meditation without thinking about things that are bothering you or the things that are causing stress in your life, then good. There are meditation music, or what they call them, meditation speeches, or whatever they have them on YouTube, or you can find people who practice meditation and join them, or just learn how to do meditation, or learn how to take time to yourself, quiet time with yourself. Be by yourself with yourself without all the noise, all the stressors, all the worries, and just calm down. Just try to calm your body down, calm your mind down. Another thing is healthy diet, so good food. And then also, last not least, support groups. Support groups, you may have to go into, just look for them. Use Google, look for support groups around you, virtual support groups or in-person support groups, people who are experiencing similar issues, and just join them and learn new skills, learn that you're not the only one, and learn what other people who have experienced what you've experienced or what you're going through did to come out of it or to survive. So support groups is a good one. And family and friends, of course, but it's not all family and friends, because some of them might be the stressors that you need to stay away. So you want to be wise in who you go to when you're experiencing chronic stress. Now let me talk about ways to reverse the damage that has been done to your brain due to chronic stress. Now, number one is, like I've mentioned, identify the triggers, identify the stressors. That is the number one thing that you need to do. You want to sit yourself down and think about who you were, who you are, or who you were before the stressors, before some of these symptoms or some of these things that I listed in the beginning, such as you having difficulty carrying out your daily activities of living, or not being able to pursue your dream, or not being able to do what you normally used to do. Things that used to be fun, now they're no longer fun. How happy you were before, how easygoing you were and how you just love life. You want to think about your baseline, and you want to think about what happened. At what point in time did your baseline shift from that to this now survival mode that you are in, where you are irritable, you are just pissed off, you are on edge, you're walking with a chip on your shoulder. You just want to think about the timeline. Once you identify the stressor, you have two options. Number one option is to learn how to cope with it, and number two is to avoid it. If you're able to cut it out of your life completely, that will be the best option, because as long as you are exposed to the chronic stress, as long as you're exposed to the stressor, your brain will never heal. Now, it's a good thing that the brain can heal, but how can the brain heal if you are still in that environment, or if you are still exposed to whatever is causing this chronic stress? The brain's not going to heal. Your prefrontal cortex is still going to be overwhelmed and dysfunctional. Your amygdala is going to be sending too many messages and just going to keep you in constant survival mode. So you need to learn how to cope with it, or you need to avoid it completely. The other thing is, of course, reach out to friends, but reach out to trustworthy friends and family, because the brain is dysfunctional and the parts of the brain have changed shapes and have reduced in size. You cannot rely on your judgment. So reach out to trustworthy friends and family and tell them what you're experiencing for them to give you their point of view. Because if they're not experiencing chronic stress, then they will be able to problem solve. They may be able to give a better decision making, or help you with a better decision making. You know, they will be able to help you think logically through what is going on and what you need to do. But if you're just there trying to think through it yourself, chances are you're not going to be able to make the right decision, because your prefrontal cortex is already out of whack. So you're not going to make a good decision. You're not going to be able to solve the problem, because everything now is difficult. Your memory is bad. So you want to reach out to healthy and trustworthy friends and family to help you think through this stuff, whatever it is, in a logical manner, so you can make a good decision. Another thing that you can do, which is the last thing I'm going to recommend, is speak to a healthcare professional. There's nothing wrong in reaching out to your doctor, to your primary care physician, or a psychiatrist, or a psychologist, or a therapist, a counselor. Reach out to somebody. Reach out to a healthcare professional, somebody who went to school to help people get through this. You may need medication to boost you, or to help your brain start thinking correctly and start problem solving, right? And that might just be a boost. You may not, need to be on the medication for months at a time. It's just maybe a boost to get you out of that funk and just to bounce you out. Once you are able to get rid of the stressor with the medication, then you're back to your baseline. So don't be shy to reach out to healthcare professional. I know a lot of people think of it as a stigma. Oh, I don't want to reach out to a healthcare professional. I don't want them to know what I'm going through, or I don't want that on my medical record that I'm not feeling fine, or I need antidepressant or whatever it is. But those are all wrong ideas. Your brain being dysfunctional and just making you feel like having this exaggerated sense of fear. So now everything is fearful to you. You think everybody's after you. You think everybody's gonna do something. So reach out to a healthcare professional if you cannot get rid of the stressor, or avoid it, or cope with it, or find family and friends to talk to. And wait a minute, let me see if there's something else here that I need to show you guys. Oh, I think that's the end of it. Oh yes, that's the end of what I have to say to you today, and I hope you have enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed coming back and sharing with you some of this valuable knowledge that I have, and as well as my opinion, because even though I'm a researcher, I do research, I still have to add my own opinion and my knowledge. So thank you so much for sticking to the end of this video. I hope this video was informative. Please like this video by giving it thumbs up, and don't forget to share this video with others. If you have not yet subscribed, if it's still red, that means you have not subscribed. Please subscribe to my channel, because it makes YouTube know that my channel is worth recommending to other viewers, and you also get notified whenever I post a new video. I will be bringing you lots of valuable information as well as scientific knowledge that will help you become a better version of yourself. With that said, I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.